Welcome to the Blue Mouse Knits. Today I'm going to teach you how to knit the easiest scarf for beginner knitters. It is worked flat as one long rectangle, and then you sew the starting and ending edges together to create a circle scarf, also called a cowl. It is worked using only the knit stitch, so I will walk you through every single step if you're new to knitting. This can be a great first project for you because all you're doing is knitting. This project is fully customizable, so you can knit this with any yarn and any needles that you want. So I used Lion Brand Thick and Quick, which is a super bulky yarn, which is labeled as a number 6 yarn when you go to the store. I used US 15s to make it work really fast. If you're not sure where to start, I would just go to the store, find some yarn that you like, and look at the back, and it will tell you a suggested needle size. Again, I suggest using some pretty thick yarn because it works up really fast and is extra cozy and soft and warm in the winter. Since this is customizable, the amount of yarn that you use is going to depend on the size that you make. Mine is approximately 28 inches in circumference and 10 inches wide. So 28 inches around, and it'll stretch a little bit more as you wear it because the stitch that we use here is very stretchy. So you could make it small like mine, or you could make it extra long so that you can wrap it around your neck twice. Mine is tall enough that I can fold it over and it sits nice and close to my neck. So this pattern is available for free on my Ravelry page. That will be linked down below, but if you'd like to support the channel, you can buy it on Etsy as well. If you're ever in need of knitting tutorials or patterns, remember to check here at the Blue Mouse for all your knitting needs. Now, let's get started. I'm using circular needles, but you do not have to for this pattern. You can use straight needles that don't have this cord. I have a lot of wrist pain, so this is easier on my wrist this way. So straight needles are perfectly acceptable. So I'm just going to use a standard cast on. You can use any cast on that you prefer. We're going to measure out about 8 inches or so of a tail, and then we create a slip knot. You just create a loop and pull the tail through to create a slip knot. And then we place it on our needle and we tighten it up just a little bit. You want it to be able to move freely, but not be super loose. So now we can grab our other needle and kind of turn our work. So here's our tail and here's our working yarn. You're going to go into the loop you just created from front to back. So it looks like this. Your right needle is underneath your left, and then you bring your working yarn, which is attached to your ball of yarn, and you're going to bring it around the right needle from front to back, so kind of underneath and over. We're going to pull our needle back through the hole we just stuck it through. So we're going to bring this yarn over with us. So kind of hold on to it with your index finger and pull that needle back through the hole like this. And you can kind of pull out a loop, and you can place that loop onto your knitting needle. And then if I pull on the yarn that's attached to my ball of yarn, I can tighten it up. So we have just cast on 1 extra stitch, and we've got 2 total. So now I'm going to do that same process again. So instead of going into our slip knot, we're going to go into the stitch we just created. You can kind of see that there's a front leg here and a back leg here. So the front leg is facing us. We're going to just pick up that leg. So it looks like this with our right needle underneath our left. And then we're going to bring the yarn attached to our ball of yarn over the right needle, kind of from front to back. That is called a yarn over. And then we're going to pull that yarn over through the hole that our needle is in. So hold on to it with our index finger and kind of just use the tip of our needle to go back out of that hole. You can pull on it to create a loop and then place that on our left-hand needle, and it will be pretty loose. So you can go ahead and tighten it up with your working yarn, and that is our cast on process. So the one that's closest to the tip of our left-hand needle is what we're going to use to go into the front loop of this one. Looks like this. With our right needle underneath our left, we're going to bring our working yarn, which is attached to our ball of yarn, over the right-hand needle from front to back, so over top and around to the back. And now we're going to hold on to it with our index finger and bring the tip of our right-hand needle back out from where it came. So pull that needle back through the hole that we stuck it in originally. Then you can pull up a loop, and then you can just slide it onto your left-hand needle. And then you can pull on the working yarn to tighten it up a little bit. You don't want these stitches to be tight. You want them to be able to easily slide across your needle, but you also don't want them super loose. It's not super important. As long as they slide easy enough, then you're good. But I want them to be about the same size, which it looks like they are. I'm just going to keep doing that. So into the front loop of the closest stitch to the edge, yarn over from front to back, bring my needle back out through that hole, pull up a loop, and place that loop on my left-hand needle, and then I can tighten it up. So you're just going to keep doing that. Now you can cast on as many stitches as you want. When I'm knitting like a cowl, I typically like to make it between 8 and 12 inches tall, but this is up to your preference. You can measure your favorite scarf or anything like that. But essentially this is how wide or how tall it is, not the circumference of the scarf. So this is not an exact science either. To make it super easy, we're not following a gauge. I can't guarantee that it's going to be 10 inches, but that's kind of what I'm looking for, is around 10 inches. You can make this as tall as you want. So here's what I have so far. After you knit your first row, it will widen a little bit. What I can measure here, it's like about 8.5 inches, but I can expect it to grow a little wider than that. And you can cast on an odd or an even number, it doesn't matter, because there's no increases or decreases in this scarf. It's just plain knitting. I've cast on a total of 35 stitches, and right now it measures unstretched about 10 inches. I can expect this to grow a little bit after I work a couple rows. So you can see my tail is on the other end, and it's time to start knitting. We're going to do pretty much the same thing we've been doing. So we go into the front loop of the first stitch on our needle, the stitch that's closest to the tip of our left-hand needle, and we're going to go into it from front to back. So it should look like this. And this is the same process that we did to cast on. So we're going to yarn over from front to back, so over top our right-hand needle. And I kind of hold on to it with my index finger, and I'm going to pull my needle back out of the hole it's coming from and bringing this yarn over with me. I just kind of pull on it and bring it back out of that hole. So this is the exact same process we did to cast on, but instead of placing this back on our left needle, we're going to keep this on our right-hand needle and slide the first stitch on our left-hand needle off. So we've just added length to it and moved it to our right-hand needle, and we've knit one stitch. So again, the process is so similar to our cast on, and we just do that the whole way across. So we go into the next stitch that's closest to the tip of our left-hand needle from front to back. So our right needle's underneath our left, and then we yarn over from front to back, and it goes over top our right-hand needle. And now we're going to take our right-hand needle out of the hole it's in and bring this yarn over with us. So kind of pull it through. And now we want to slide that left-hand stitch off. So slide it off, and there you have it. That is your second knit stitch. And it's that simple. That is the whole scarf. So you just keep going. So into the next stitch from front to back, just picking up one loop like this. If this gives you a better view. So with our right-hand needle underneath our left, we're going to yarn over from front to back, pull that loop through, and then slide that off your left-hand needle. You want these stitches on your right-hand needle to be able to slide very easily. And then again, so go into the front loop of that stitch, yarn over from front to back, and I use the tension from my left hand to kind of pull that yarn through, and then I slide it back up on my right-hand needle to make sure it's the right size, and then slide that stitch off my left-hand needle. Now, if you hold the yarn in your right hand, that's totally okay. The process is the same. It will just look slightly different. Our needle into the front loop, yarn over from front to back, and then pull that loop through and slide that stitch off. So the process is the same. It's just how you hold your yarn, and then you just keep going. And I start to combine it into one motion. So into the front loop, yarn over, pull a loop through, and then I can slide that off with my tension there. So when I'm doing this, I'm sticking the needle in past the tip. So you want to wrap it around the middle of the needle instead of the tip, because if you do it all the way down here and only wrap it around the tip of your needle, the stitch will be too small. So you want to make sure the needle's in about an inch or so, and then yarn over, pull that through. You can retension there. And when you come to the final stitch, you just do the same thing. Into the front loop, yarn over, pull through, slide off your left-hand needle. You should have the same number of stitches now that you did at the beginning. So if you aren't happy with the height of your cowl, mine grew a lot here. So if you're not happy with that, you can just take it off, pull out the yarn and start again, and just cast on a few less stitches. A little bit of guesswork, but for me, this is giving me, I cast on 35. And this is giving me almost 16 inches of height. I cast on too many, but that's okay. You can either keep going with the height that you have, or you can start over. So for me, I'm going to rip out and start again. But while I have this stretched out, I'm going to count how many stitches, just about give me 10-inch width. This was too wide for me, so I restarted and cast on 26 stitches to get closer to a 10-inch width or 10-inch height. But if you want it taller, you can also rip out and add more stitches. So this is an easy way to adjust to the size that you want. So if you're happy with the amount of stitches that you have, you can go ahead and continue on. So you're going to turn your work. We just need to flip our needles. So this is currently my right hand needle, but I want it to be on my left. So I just flip it. So now I'm going to bring the yarn around my needle to the back. So don't just flip over like this. You want to bring it around, so probably underneath the left hand needle to the back. So it's connected like this. So it's connected to our first stitch here, but it's not over our needle. So that's all we're going to do for our entire cowl until we get to our bind off. You just go into the front loop of the first stitch like this. Your right needle is underneath your left, and then you yarn over from front to back, and then you guide that yarn over through the hole like this, and then you can slide that stitch off your left hand needle. So we just transferred it from our left needle to our right needle and added one additional row, making it taller. So we're just going to keep doing that. So into the front loop, yarn over, pull through, slide off, and that's it. That is how you knit the entire cowl. You're only going to use that singular knit stitch all the way across. And then when you get to the end of the row, you just flip it so that all the stitches are on your left hand needle and your right hand needle is empty. So you're basically transferring all your stitches from your left hand needle to your right hand needle, and then you flip your work, and then you do that all again. So you're going to do that until your cowl is long enough to wrap around your neck. So the amount of rows that you knit is the circumference of your cowl. I finished the cowl with about 98-ish rows. For you, you'll want to finish with about half an inch longer than your desired length, because you will lose a bit of length when you sew your ends together. You can knit your piece as long as you want. Keep in mind that garter stitch, which is this stitch here, is very stretchy. So once I seam it and kind of scrunch it up to put it on, it will be able to stretch a lot. The most important thing to remember is that you need a little bit of yarn to do your seaming, because right now we just have one long piece and we need to turn this into a cowl. We're now going to do what's called a bind off. I'm going to show you guys the most basic bind off. It's the most commonly used one in the beginning. You should have the knit stitch down at this point, and that's pretty much what the bind off involves. So to begin, you're going to need to knit 2 stitches. So my yarn is attached here in the back. So I'm going to knit 1. Now knit a second. And now what we're going to do is we're going to pull the second from the edge over the first from the edge and off. Pull the second one here over the first and off. So you can just use your hands if you want. I'm going to hold the one closest to the edge with my index finger, slide it down to the tip, but prevent it from falling with my index finger. Pull the second one over and off. So now I want to kind of loosen this stitch on my right hand just a little bit. So in order to work the bind off, you need to have 2 stitches on your right hand needle. So we need to knit 1 more. Now that we have 2, we can repeat the process. So pull the second from the edge over the first from the edge and off. So slide them down to the tip of your needles, prevent it from falling. Take your fingers, pull it over and off. Loosen up that stitch a little bit and repeat. So knit 1. Slide down to the edge but prevent it from falling. Pull the furthest over the closest and off. Knit 1 and repeat. And that's it. You're just going to do that all the way across. You can use your needle to pull it over if you want. So I do the same thing. I slide down to the edge, prevent this from falling with my index finger, take my left hand needle into the front loops of that second stitch, and then just use it to pull it over and off. Okay, it's the same motion. You can do it with your needle or your hands. Either way, just do that all the way across, and I'll meet you back here for your final bind off stitches. Remember to do this a little bit loosely, so don't pull tight. You can see how I have pulled up so that there's some space underneath the stitch. that's what you want. So I've made it down to my last couple of stitches. So I just keep going, knit one, pull over and off, knit the final stitch off my left hand needle, and then pull over and off. And I can kind of pull on my final stitch, pull it out a little bit, and you're done with your needles. You can pull this loop out until it's big enough to put the rest of your yarn through it. I'm going to put the rest of my yarn through that hole, and then I can pull on my tail, and I can kind of pull down on it, and there you have it. That is nice and secure. So here's my bind off. It should look something like this. I'm going to show you how to seam your ends together. I have my piece folded over like this. Both my tails are down here. I can disregard my cast on tail because I am not worrying about that right now. And then you can cut the bind off tail about 2 times the bind off edge for our seaming. Now you'll need to thread your bind off tail onto a yarn needle. So I'm actually going to use a contrasting color, but you're going to want to use what's attached here already. So the side on the inside is my better looking side, if that makes sense. This side of my cast on looks better to me than this side. And this side of my bind off looks better than this side. What's on the inside here is going to be the right side. So you'll be able to see the seam on this current side, but the inside you will not be able to see it as well. So I'm going to line up my ends. So now I'm just going to kind of go from underneath and come up. Go from underneath and come up. So I want to catch just the edges here. This is my whole cast on edge. You could catch just part of it or you could catch the whole thing. It'll just determine how chunky your seam is. So this is the whole thing right here. You could catch just part of it or you could catch the whole thing. My only suggestion is to stay consistent. So I'm going to go underneath a whole stitch on the back and a whole stitch on the front. And I'm just moving up a little bit. It doesn't have to be exactly 1 stitch. Move up a little bit, do the same thing. You can kind of see how this is going. I'm trying to space them out about equally, but it doesn't really matter as long as it's seamed shut enough for you to wear it. I'm only catching the edge of both of my cast on and bind off edges, but this is essentially it. Just a very, very simple little stitch. It's not super neat, but if you don't care about that and you just want to get the job done, this is perfect for it. Yours should be the same color, so it'll blend in better. I'm mostly doing this by feel. I just have the cast on and bind off edges pinched in between my left hand, and I'm just kind of moving up and feeling for a space. But this will be on the inside, so you won't really even see this seam very much, and you'll probably wear it around the back side of your neck. So go ahead and do this all the way towards the end, and your pieces should be close to even towards the end. If one is a lot longer, you can kind of pull these out and go back a little bit and try and even it out. Like say this one was a lot longer for some reason. I would just go further up here and further back here. If it's like a giant gap, I would either start over or at least rip back a little bit. But if it's not a giant gap, you can kind of make up for it there. So there we have it. I just did it all the way up to the top. So it will look like this, but yours should be the same color so it will blend in more. And then what I would do to weave in my ends, I would just kind of go through this way, pull through, go back through like here, pull through, go back here, pull through, and then I would feel confident enough to like snip it there and then do something similar with your cast on tail. That is how you make the super simple beginner garter cowl. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. And if you did, please give the video a like. Even just a single like on this video helps boost it to bring it out to new people, which really helps the channel out. And be sure to come back to the Blue Mouse Knits for all your knitting needs. And if you're looking for knitting patterns from beginner to advanced, you can find them on my Ravelry and Etsy stores. Thank you guys so much for watching. You can check out more of my free pattern tutorials linked here.